he says we are going. Are we live?
Streaming, yeah, it's now streaming.
Okay. Okay, I think we can start. We should be live. Okay, we are live. So, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We were facing some technical difficulties just now. So thank you for joining the Band Directors Association in Online with the Pros. This afternoon, we will be joining 3 of Singapore's best saxophonists to learn more about their chosen instrument and also how to get better at it. Hope you have all been good and staying home and safe, yeah? All right, so let's get to know our saxophonists a bit better first before we start the session. Maybe Leslie, you can start first.
Hi, I'm Leslie, and then I teach saxophone at the Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts, and I tutor around Singapore. And I did my studies in Thailand, Mahidol, and then I went to the University of Wyoming. Then now actually I'm still studying my doctorate at the Mahidol University. So yeah, that's about me, I guess.
How long have you been playing the saxophone?
I started in the school bands as the same as everyone, I guess. So let me count. Oh my God, it's scary. Like 24 years, I believe, 25.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I didn't really seriously think about making this a career until about 10 years, slightly more than 10 years ago. So I went to study in 2007. So it's been like 12 years, yeah.
Okay. Maybe let's go to Tianze.
Hi everyone, my name is Tianze. I'm currently doing my degree program at Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts under the RCM. Yeah, I've been tutoring in Singapore for around 6 to 7 years now, and also teaching at Pharma, Flute and Music Academy on weekends.
Yeah. And how long have you been playing?
I think it's about, also started at Sec 1, so I think about 12 years now.
Okay, yeah. I'm just indirectly asking for your age, yeah. So Michelina?
Hi everyone, I'm Michelina. I started same as the both of them. I started in the school band, and then I left to do my bachelor in Melbourne at the Melbourne Conservatorium of Music. Then I took a gap year, and then I went to France, studied with Marie-Bernadette Charrier in Bordeaux. And then I recently came back in August after finishing my master's at the Conservatorium in Amsterdam with Arno Bonkam. So that has been my journey.
Okay, great. Okay, so I think we should just dive straight into the questions. We have a lot of questions to answer this afternoon, so we'll try our best to answer all, if not most of them. All right. So let's begin with maybe the really fundamental stuff, like for example, embouchure or forming the mouth shape. Many students seem to have questions with regards to how to form the embouchure and how to produce a good sound. So maybe Leslie, you want to start first?
I think the saxophone embouchure is one of the easiest. But there are a lot of factors to consider. But if you're talking about the shape, the most basic one would be the whistle. I think that's the saxophone shape. And I think when you read online, right, there are like many people telling you the saxophone embouchure is round. So that's not wrong. I think when you make this shape, it's round. But I think most students have to think about the changes in dynamics, especially. So I always tell students that the saxophone embouchure is like this. We whistle and then we say yu, and then I will ask them to put four fingers on their lips. Please make sure don't put like you're biting a hamburger. Yeah, that's what a lot of my students do. They always put on the lips. So when they say yu, they push up. And that's the saxophone embouchure for like using these 4 points to control the mouthpiece. But a lot of students, when you say yu, right, they'll do like yu, oo, ee, they'll do like this. So that's one of the concerns that I have with embouchure. But you say whistle and using this 4 point to push out the air.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for some people who can't whistle, like even myself, I can't whistle. So would you have other suggestions?
Actually, just putting the fingers here and then yu, just say yu. Okay. Like jade in Chinese, yu, and then I think it just comes out. But maybe Michelina have another explanation.
Yep.
For me, basically, is putting the top teeth really firm on the mouthpiece, and then everything is just going in, to the center. So it's pretty much a round kind of shape. So I use yu, the fish, rather than yu. So it's keeping it there, yu. And a nice exercise to do away from the saxophone is to, keep this position for 30 seconds 3 times a day. So you don't have to say, but just keep it firm. And then if you're touching around your lips, everything is firm all around. Yeah, you want to have the corners in and everything firm.
A student is asking if it's round. Is it true that if you move your mouth downwards, it's wider and much louder? Wilder than and much louder? Any thoughts to that?
Tianze, you want to answer that?
I think the explanation to that, lowering your jaw wider, basically your air also, the volume, the amount of air that is coming out of your mouth is also a lot bigger. That explains why it creates a much more larger sound. But again, with that openness, you will not be able to sustain the tone for like a phrase, like 4-bar phrase, and also the pitch will be very flat. Yeah, due to the open jaw. Yeah, so playing loud should not be done with the embouchure. It should be with the air intensity. Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts, maybe Michelina or Leslie?
Yeah, no, we share the same idea.
Same ideas. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, I mean, moving on to something a bit. We were talking about this just a while ago. Like, with regards to instrument setup and posture for saxophonists, something that we don't usually talk about often, but I think it's very important, especially for younger players. How you set up the neck strap, for example. So, would anyone have any thoughts on that?
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
Okay, for me, right, in NAFA, because Leslie is my teacher, so every time in the beginning, we will always start off like pulling the neck strap up and bringing the instrument, the mouthpiece, to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what Michelina talked about, the top teeth is always on top of the mouthpiece and not the bottom, and not the mouthpiece sitting on the bottom lips. It actually creates pinching, yeah, and biting. Yeah, so
Yeah.
usually we have to pull the neck strap higher. Yeah, and it's quite uncomfortable in the beginning for students. Yeah, but they just have to get used to it because this will allow them to have lesser tension on their shoulders and their neck. Yeah.
Okay. How about Michelina? You were sharing also about how you want it to be pivoted. Is it? I think we were talking about it.
I think basically when you play saxophone, the two main points of focus is the top teeth here and the right thumb. So if you have these 2 points, and then the fingers can freely move, you don't have any tension on the fingers. And then this, like, the sound, so I get my students to play like an open C sharp, really focusing on these 2 points. Yeah, and it really helps.
Okay. Would you recommend, I've seen some tutors before suggesting about moving the thumb out. Would you recommend that? When you play the saxophone, moving the right thumb outwards, so pushing the saxophone out in a way.
No,
Okay,
not so
just
much.
comfortable,
Yeah.
right?
As long as it's comfortable, leaning, you don't want that extra tension. It makes sense on soprano, but on alto, not so much.
Okay.
I think there's a misconception. I think in terms of the instrument, right, because we have the thumb hook, so a lot of students would like to put their hand on the thumb hook and let it become a rest. That becomes a problem because if you press your hand like this, if you do it like for me, I've been doing it like for 25 years, there's bound to be tension on the head. Actually, I have tennis elbow and I have never exercised a day in my life. So that's dangerous. You're creating tension to your body. So I think with the same thing as what Mitch and Tianze say, right? I always ask students to put their focus on the left thumb, to just push the left thumb so that the mouthpiece is on the top teeth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, guys, for that. Moving on. Okay, let's talk about
can
one.
I add something,
Yeah,
actually?
Sure, of course.
I think it's very important, like, to have a neck strap that is like taut. I see a lot of those bouncy kind of neck straps, and I think it's not very advisable, honestly. Yeah, because you put it to a certain height, and then you put your instrument near you, and then it changes completely because it's stretchy. What are your thoughts,
Most likely
Leslie?
it's because the neck strap has been there for like 10 years and didn't change, I guess. So like a neck strap is not meant to be there forever, I guess, especially if you have like something that's like $30. I think after 2-3 years, like every student should have their own neck strap, like, ideally, because the student can have a very good height and then after 3 years it start dropping, and you pass it on to the next generation. I have a student, I taught in a school, the next strat wouldn't go higher than here. So the student actually has to play like that. And imagine like 4 years of having to play like it. It's not their problem, but the equipment, they also don't know what happened. And so like after 4 years, so after they leave school, they have to walk like this. So that's really dangerous. I think we have a question like equipment. I think the neck strap is the most important equipment that we should have. Yeah.
Yeah, we are going to speak a bit more about equipment a bit later,
Yeah.
and yeah. But just to summarize, I would believe what the three of you are saying is there should be not much weight of the saxophone resting on the thumb, the right thumb, and also the mouthpiece must contact the upper teeth. We would say, right? Okay.
Yes.
So that the lower lip is free. Also, you don't want it to be resting on the lower lip. Is that
Yeah,
right?
there's one more thing regarding the left thumb as well. Sometimes I think it's the easiest for the conductor to help the student is when visually when you look at the thumb of the student, the left thumb is actually horizontal this way, then it is not correct position. It should be actually a little bit like a bit 45 degrees upwards, so that the palm is actually the palm key in the front looks like this. It's not this way or bend like that. Because of this bending, it actually creates a lot of tension. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Great, thanks. Okay, let's move on to the next big topic. Actually, I think we have the most number of questions about this, which is about tonguing. So perhaps you all can share about your basic idea of tonguing, and then we can go more into detail about what specific questions people ask. Maybe Michelina, you want to start first?
For me, the front part of the tongue should touch the reed, and the most important part is really touching the tip of the reed. But for me, I don't really matter which part of the tongue is touching the reed, as long as it's like the front, generally the front part, because your tongue, right, it's a curved shape. You don't even know, like which is the tip of the tongue. People say tip of the tongue, but like where is the tip of your tongue? So actually, I read about this experiment or research that they actually, they colored the tip of the reed and got a couple of professionals to, touch, do some articulation, and then they check on the tongue. They say they're doing the tip of the reed, but actually it's not really exactly the tip of the reed. So that's quite an interesting thing that I heard. So for me, I think tip of the reed, really focus on that, and then fast air, of course.
How about Tianzi?
Okay, so for me, right, usually I will ask students to feel by saying do or DDD or TTT. So the place where the tongue touches and releases from the top of the mouth, that is the place where usually I'll ask the student to use that part of the tongue to touch at the reed. Yeah.
Okay. Any other things to add for Leslie?
So for me is when I teach tonguing, so I think my experience with both of them is a bit, they teach student that maybe just start to, I always get student that a bit older, so they already have their own method of tonguing, and the problem that I see is always that they're always hitting the reed. Like for me, my philosophy is to make sure, like just for guidelines, to have your reed here and your tongue lower, and then you lick it like ice cream. So but but it's a very, for me it's like I'm like a physiotherapist. The students that come here is already doing like this, so I always have to make them go lower and then just licking so what I'll get my student to do is for them to play a G, and which is just holding down one hand 3 notes, and then putting their hand there and then just doing a back motion, and having their student blowing air and then just tongue at irregular intervals, because if they do it at regular intervals, then they already go back to their old habits.
Yeah. A bit related to what you were just saying about tonguing, Zenon was asking about how to tongue smoothly. And he also asked something about when tonguing, where should your tongue be placed? So that, I think you just answered that, the underside or the tip of the reed. And he also asked how to flutter tongue or how to tongue fast. There were a lot of questions about tonguing from him. So you might want to add on.
I think most of us will say, I think tonguing is a very deceiving word. I think for saxophone, tonguing is actually most reliant on air. So you must really have air support. if you want to do marcato, staccato, and everything, it's a lot of tongue. Like I always tell my student, tonguing is 10% tongue, 90% air. So you must really have very good control of your air. What was the question? How to tongue smoothly? I think smoothly is you with what I say with the tongue and the reed, you have to blow you must first have a very nice sound and a very consistent airstream, and then you just imagine yourself cutting the air.
Yeah.
But if you have a very blunt knife, if your tongue is very slow, the cut you're going to make is very big. You can see the cut. But if you have like a really expensive Japanese knife and you cut, then you can't see it. So you have to train your tongue to be like cutting Wagyu beef, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or expensive sushi, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, guys?
I have a little exercise that I get my students to do. So, like, you know where their tongue is exactly touching. So I'm going to make 2 examples. The first one.
Yeah.
So my tongue is under the reed. So you hear this tua, tua,
Yeah.
and then another one. So this is really at the tip of the reed. So I think like if you do this mouthpiece, just on the mouthpiece, just 4 crotchets, 5 crotchets, you can hear exactly where the tongue is. And then, you know, this really translates to the rest of the instrument.
Yeah. So you want to achieve no bending sound when you're
Exactly.
tonguing. Keep it as smooth as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
So everyone can check.
Yeah. How about tonguing fast? Is it also similar?
For me, the tongue is a muscle. So if you want to run a marathon, right? Like you don't just run tomorrow, you don't train, you know? So if you want to tongue fast, it's the same thing. You have to, you know, get the stamina, you have to train it. So I like to do ta 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 into my scales. And then just like, you know, having a little notebook where you write, okay, today I did it at 80, tomorrow 84. And then, you know, you get through the thing. And then finally you get to like 132, 160, for example.
Okay. Would you say anything about keeping your tongue really near the reed or something to do with the air when you want to tongue fast? Because I think a lot of students are going to start focusing on the tongue when you want to tongue fast. But actually, I think it relates more to how near your tongue is near the reed and how fast you're using the air, right?
For me, the fast air really helps because like you see, like the air really propels the tongue. You know, and then it becomes lighter as well, of course, if you're keeping your tongue as close to the reed as well.
Okay.
Definitely, these are factors that help.
I think students must be aware that everything like ornamentation you do on the side, like you want to do flutter, you want to do growl, you want to do altissimo, you want to do tonguing, your air will slow down. So you must really compensate for that to maintain the same constant sound that you want to make. So if you really want to tongue fast, you really have to like give more air and be aware that your air is actually dropping. So you need to compensate to keep it there. Because once your air drop, it will only drop more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
So I think in regards to the position of the tongue, I think if you do it progressively, your tongue will naturally get it. So like what Mish say, like just practice slowly and then follow. Once you can get that, you will find the angle of your tongue, because we are not going to do like 84 and 120 tomorrow. So like what Mish said, I'll actually get students to do 3 sets a day, like maybe 80, 84, and then 88. And then tomorrow they start 84, 88, 92. And then they progressively they have a few range of speed they can go to.
Okay, sure. Okay, let's move on. A student, Arjan Biswasi, was asking, what's the purpose of learning major scales? And I think we can take the opportunity to explain why major scales are so important for any instrument, especially, I mean, saxophone and especially any instrument actually. So, Tianze, you want to speak about it first?
I'm studying in music school, so basically it's very simple. Your music actually they have keys written in your pieces, so you actually have to know your skills very well to avoid. For me, is to avoid playing the wrong notes and also to understand the different combination of the keys in the scale, like what kind of sound you are creating. I think learning the scale is very important for all musicians to improve. Like it's not just playing the right notes, but also understand like the harmony in the keys itself and the intonation, the intervals. Yeah, that's for me as a music student. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Mitch, you want to say your thoughts first? I think Mitch is hang, I guess. So I'll say mine first. I think knowing your scales allow you to understand the tonality, because a lot of pieces you will have 2-5-1, and then minor, major, dominant, and then major. But then knowing your scales allow you to hear the music better. But at the same time, as an instrumentalist, that's where your technique comes from. If you cannot play your scales at 132, you cannot play a band piece of music that's at 132 in running notes. So you must be able to have that technical ability. And actually, why do we need to know major scales? We need to know major scale, minor scales, diminished, dominant. Yeah, I think if you want to be a really good musician, that there's no running away from scales. But I understand that learning scales can be very frustrating. So you can learn to break down your scales. It's not like you have to learn all 12 major scale by this week. So I always ask students to do, okay, let's do C major this week. Next week, do C sharp major. And it's your habit. You can do C major. If your wish is to get to 120, then you start from 60 and you build it up. Some people build it up by 1 metronome click, 2 metronome click, 4 metronome click. And then you can go on from there and then C. But next week, my advice is to do C sharp. Don't do circle of fourth, circle of fifth, because if you do that, you will eventually not get to C sharp and F sharp major scale. Yeah, that's my thought.
Okay, sure. I guess Mish is having a bit of a technical issue. We'll just move on first, yeah?
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, related to major skills, I would think it's also about how to do warm-ups. Is there any warm-up routine that you would suggest for our younger players especially?
For me is what I get my students, because again I say like it's very frustrating to play scales. Let me take my instrument. Do you still hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, great. So what I get my students to do is, you will not, like when you buy something online, you will never give your credit number like in 16 numbers. So I get my students to do a repeated pattern.
Yeah.
So if you play just 5 notes, like you play a G major, and then we repeat some notes. So that's just 1 note of G major scale. Then we'll start from the second note. And so on. Let me just put on my headphones. So, sorry. Yeah, so we'll do that. For the saxophone, for scales, we always advise students to play the whole range of the instrument. So we will always play from G to the high F sharp. So if you do this, then the highest note you can play is B, because you have to play the high F sharp for 5 notes. And then we'll go back down and play to the low F sharp. So that way you understand the 5-note relationship, and you can, it's very small, so you are able to handle it. So what I also get my students to do is they will play very slow. They will start from 120, but this is quaver. So there is like 60 in crotchets. So they will feel the quaver pulse, and then they will just go on from there. And
do
then,
you mind demonstrating the last bit that you just mentioned?
So I'll get them to play. Can you hear me play if I use my headphone? Let me try. You guys hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then once they can do that, and then because when you can hear quaver, you're actually playing the 16 note very clearly. So you are able to play 1, 2, because for us when we play 16 note when we are kid, So it's always not even. So you should subdivide your notes very evenly. And I know it's very frustrating to play the metronome for students, but trust me, God will help us eventually. Mitch, do you have anything to say about this?
I think for me, this is a very useful way of thinking about phrasing in the longer term as well. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Hello?
clear. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I think this is a very nice way of thinking about phrasing. So when you think of the quaver subdivision, right? So you go da da dee da 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 dee da dum versus da da dee da 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 dee da dum. You know, it's a very different kind of phrasing versus da da dee da 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 dee da dum. I think with scales, it's very important to, you know, make it musical, find that little phrase in the scale. So if you know, like this helps with the phrasing in the long term, really, really. And
I mean, that was exactly one of the questions was asking us. Zenon was asking us about how to improve musicality, and I think one big important way is to incorporate it during scale practice, right?
For me as well, I think the full range scales is very important, but I also like doing my scales in thirds and in fourths, both in major and minor. So I have a little notebook that, you know, it keeps me accountable. Yeah, but mine is like here.
What is that, Leslie?
This is the scale book by John Marie Londex. So the nice thing about it is because it actually goes to the full range. So you can have the scales and then in thirds, in fourths, all the way. I never done the octaves. Let me check. Yeah, all the way up to the octaves.
Wow.
Yeah. So
it's a very
we have
useful
the
resource.
Yeah, we have a scales resource, so it should be easy to find, I guess.
Okay.
I personally like writing out my own scales, if you can see. And then I keep a tempo marking as well. So like it really keeps me
It's like a practice
accountable.
diary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for scales, only for scales.
Only for scales. Okay. Tianzi, anything else to add?
Yeah, to add on, apart from just improving your phrase, your air stream, I think also one very important factor is when you are practicing, you have to ensure that your fingers are always close to the keys and not slamming very heavily. Yeah, because and why we should always keep our fingers close so that we don't waste too much time trying to close the keys and then open again. So sometimes I call this like flying fingers, like you see students doing it's just as simple as just G A B C, but they do. Yeah, then this becomes a problem in the speed in the long term, and it's important for them to practice the full range because the saxophone keys are on the side as well. So when they press the palm key, sometimes they go like that, opening up their fingers. Because sometimes when we teach them, you want them to press the palm key, you will show them this way so that it doesn't obstruct so that it's clearer for them to see. But their fingers have to still be at the front when they are pressing the palm key so that they don't do this. Yeah, if not, it becomes a problem in the long term as well. Yeah.
So I mean, ideally, would you suggest they leave their fingers directly on top or resting on the pearls of the saxophone?
I think it should always be on the pearls if it's possible. I know it's quite difficult, but it should always try their best. Even for the pinky, they should try to always keep it at the keys, on the keys itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Okay, we're almost done with fundamentals. The last bit here that I've taken note of is how to achieve good tone or an open sound. That's one term that I kept seeing in our questions. And I believe this is also related to voicing. So it's quite a big topic. It's a bit advanced, I would think, even. So maybe we can start with good tone and then go on to voicing, perhaps. Yeah. Michelina?
For me, the very, very first thing is to really listen to professional saxophonists in orchestras, in wind band.
Yeah.
You know, find that tonal concept that you want to work towards. You know, having that idea in your head, first of all, really, really, really makes the difference. I mean, like you say good, but like, you know, sometimes I wonder, like, what is good? You want maybe describe the sound more in more like you want an intense sound, you want a round sound, you want a bright sound, you want a warm sound, open sound. Yeah, like so having like these little keywords, if you can write it down will be even better. Like to, you know, find like what kind of sound you're looking for. So then second of all, experiment. There are many things that can affect sound. So basically, you know, your lung capacity, your oral cavity, what your embouchure is doing, And then of course the mouthpiece, the reed, the instrument as well matters. So,
Yeah.
you know, finding little things like that, playing with the vowels, A, I, O, U, you know, can help with the sound. So a little exercise that even myself finds difficult is to, you know, set a stopwatch on 2-3 minutes and play that one note. So yesterday I was talking to one of my students and he was saying that, okay, the high C is a treble note. So just set a stopwatch 2-3 minutes and just play that high C over and over. But every time you know reset it, you're listening because you're only doing that one thing. And then like, you know, finding the, you know, the way that you want to, and then keeping it.
Yeah. Any other comments, Leslie and Tian?
For me, student tone has to do with a lot of the oral cavity. So if obviously we cannot spend too much time on this, but if you want to adjust the tone to what you like, maybe you need to think about what you're doing inside your oral cavity. So what I always actually I'm a dictator when it comes to this is I always want my student to play with a high tongue position, because what people don't realize is when we are usually in Singapore students, we get a lot of band students that actually play with a oo position, like your tongue is saying like oo all the time. But you have to understand when they say oo, when they need to play the high F sharp, the highest note on the saxophone, the tongue has to be at E position. So when your students cannot get the high F sharp, they start squeaking or they start playing too low, it's because the tongue is always a too low position. But when they play scale, they will bridge up, the tongue will automatically move. And when you have a student that's very honky, because when they are at U position to play the low note to push enough air, the tongue will go to the R position. So the student tongue is actually, when they play scale, is moving like this all the time. But actually, if they stick their tongue all the way at E, right, the variation is only like this. But if they do it at U, the variation is like this. So if students want to play their sound, they can try playing with the tongue position like E, U, R. If you say E, the tongue is very high. If you say U, the tongue is in the middle part. R is like, so the different variation of the tongue position matters in the sound. But I will always advise band student to play at E. For my students, because I always hear them moving like this, and it's they also cannot control it. So having a fixed position, they can control it. It will get to a point where it gets very bright. So when it starts to get very bright, then the students can start trying to move front backwards with the tongue very high. So it will help them to adjust their sound. I don't know if that helps.
Okay, I mean, what you're speaking about when you speak about vowels, you know, and EAR, right? It's about voicing. Am I right?
I don't think it reached to the point of voicing yet, but it's just sending the air to the instrument. So when they goes into voicing, the voicing is, for me, is like where the tongue is already fixed and it starts moving around. This is just for them to have a very constant sound first. So when they want to do voicing exercise like altissimo exercise, overtones exercise, or just making sure there's no sound change, then that's the voicing part. But a lot of students that I see is they haven't even understand the concept that their tongue is moving around. So when they play a high note, it just goes like that. When they go low note, so they cannot control playing soft on the low note because they have no control of their tongue.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I will show. I think Daniel, I will ask some. So if they play with a, so I will use a B, because B is a very bright note, right? But if a normal band student, they'll play it. The high F sharp cannot come out. And if they go to the low note, that's how a typical year one band student will sound like, you know, because the low note will be very honky. But if we keep the tongue at the very high position all the time, so that there's no much change in the variety of the sound. But I actually get all my students to do this EUR exercise for one octave. Like, this exercise actually just, it doesn't help them with their sound, but it teach them to be aware of how they move their tongue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Any other comments on this?
For me, something more technical and more useful for the beginner students, right, will be to always use a very consistent air stream and always support your air every time when you play your long tones or your notes. Also, you can try using doing mouthpiece pitch. Like on the alto, you have to try to achieve a concert A, then on the tenor, concert G, and on the bari, concert D. Yeah. Okay, the mouthpiece pitch itself is also actually a bit challenging. So in the first 3 to 6 months, I wouldn't suggest for set ones to start doing it because their embouchure is not, the muscles are not developed yet. So they can try to do it with the neck. Yeah. So for the alto is a concert A flat. The tenor and bari, I think it's concert E for both. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Okay, so let's move on to slightly more advanced things on the saxophone. So the first one, I've seen about 2 questions on this, was about low notes. Any tips on playing low notes? It seems low notes are quite a problem for younger players especially. So any suggestions?
Like if they want to play normal low notes, I think it's really just putting the tongue high up. Like the tongue has to be on top, but it has to be pushing air into the mouthpiece. So the problem why low note is a problem is because they always play with a very open tongue position. So they are pushing so much air, but the air is not really being utilized, like sending it into the instrument. So I will actually talk a little bit about air, I guess. Is like it's very hard for students to feel pushed out, like push your stomach out. That's why use your diaphragm. So our students cannot know where the diaphragm is. You know, I cannot feel where my diaphragm is. So what I ask my student to do is really to just blow their nose and close the mouth. So when they do it, it creates this is actually called a Valsalva maneuver. You should Google it. It's actually something that we do every day. And then so that the student already has the capacity to do that. They just don't know. So when we ask them to push out, so they're actually wasting the space. So they should really just think about pushing down and then you shooting the air out, you know. And if they can do it consistently and then with a high tongue position, they should be able to play low notes well. But if they want to play soft, I will just tell them to use less teeth. Don't bite so much teeth. Just do a subtone, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of them will end up going to a higher octave when they don't intend to, especially on low notes.
But with again, there are some factors is you have to make sure that your instrument is working well because the saxophone pads leak a lot. So I usually send my instrument for repair every 3 months, you know, 3 to 6 months, and then making sure that it's in alignment, and then with good air support and practice. But I think if you want to play low notes, you can play your scale. Like what we say, I think most of them have problem playing their low notes because they don't practice their scales. So if they practice their scales, they bridge every note. Like what Mitch say, play scales in thirds and in fourths. What it does is like when you play a G and a D, you have to understand the instrument keys. The pads are very big. So when you play a B and you play a C and then suddenly you press a D, the airflow is very different.
Sure, I understand. Yeah. How about with regards to low notes? Let's could we add on a bit more about the fingering, especially with the rolling of the keys? Is there anything that students should take note of?
For me, I think they shouldn't move like this. You have a roller. If you have a roller, they should use it. Yeah, with the roller. So the students, when you play your scale, you must learn how to roll. It's easy for them, but it's hard. So with regards to practicing low notes, right? I say if you have tension, don't play it.
Yeah.
Don't strain on it. But every day maintain a bit of practice, 5-10 minutes. Eventually your finger will get strong enough. So for very young kids, they will be very hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about would you suggest that they bend the pinky or what kind of position should they adopt?
I always tell my student to just be like a zombie, and that should be the position.
Okay.
Yeah.
Natural hand position.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Mitch, do you have something to add on?
I agree. Like keep the piano fingers the really round because this is the most natural with the pinkies as well. Yeah, because my pinky is actually really quite small. So I actually had to do a lot of exercises with the pinky to really get it. But yeah, as what Leslie said, really be careful of the tension because it's very easy to hurt yourself with these pinky kind of exercises.
Sure. Tianzi, any final comments on
Okay,
this?
I think some exercises to help, right, is for the students that don't really play the low notes very often, is also to strengthen the muscle and the familiarity of the movement, so they can always they don't have to play the instrument. For example, if they are training their right hand fingers, always put the pinky close to the key and then just practice sliding down and up. Just do it a few times. Yeah, it's just to improve the strength, yeah, a little bit. And once they feel a little bit numb or cramped, they should stop actually, because it takes time to improve the muscle. Same for the left pinky as well. Yeah, just practice using the keys mechanism. Yeah, I think it will help. You don't have to play because sometimes they think too much in getting the sound, then they don't think about the fingers, or sometimes they think too much about the fingers, they don't think about their air, then it will still affect their playing. So I think they can actually start by practicing the finger movement first. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, now something related to the opposite end of the saxophone, altissimo, or very, very high notes. How do we approach it? How do we go about, conquering that register of the saxophone?
Mitch, you want to talk first?
A very, very big conversation.
Yeah.
So basically, there are three ways I would say
Yeah.
you can approach altissimo playing. The first one, overtones. The second one, overblowing the palm keys. The third one, creating a vent with the F. So you play the front keys fingering without this F actually. So maybe the first one, overtones.
Yeah.
Basically, maybe I can demonstrate a bit. You know?
Okay.
And then like so
Mitch, sorry. When you played, it was we couldn't quite hear the higher notes.
Okay.
You want to try again? Yeah. Yeah, that was better.
Yeah, so something like that.
Yeah.
So it's really not easy. So one way is to really you really have to imagine the tone in your head before you actually do this. So from the low B flat to the B flat, the first B flat, and then to the F. These three shouldn't be too difficult. I think most people can get it straight away.
Okay.
And then just really finding the B flat with the octave key, this position. This one is a challenge. When I was practicing it as well, it took me like a year to get it. And then really matching that and figuring out what you're doing. And then the high ones as well, it's not so difficult because it's like a tune kind of squeak sort of. So if you can come down from the high ones as well and just slowly finding, so you have these two range, the high and the bottom, to really find the middle. So that's my like little tip for overtones. But
So
basically it's doing it every day, like 20 minutes and really keep persisting at it.
okay, how do you go about the different tones again? Using voicing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So really having that imagination of the tone that you're playing next.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry.
No.
I think for students, right, it can be, especially the B flat and the D is very hard. So I think if they cannot get it, they can just skip it and every day try to conquer it. But the high one is actually very easy. So it's a chore to practice overtones, which I hate. But if my students cannot do it, I'll just ask them to play the high one and the low one. So if I'll play the low one, so you have to be very stable in this tree. But of course, you still have to play higher. But then they can just try to pitch something high. So I'll try to ask them to play a very stupid tune up there, and then just to feel the movement. So the more they feel their movement, then they will start to be able to play the low one better. Yeah, sorry, Mish, I'm sorry I can't do your composition.
It's okay. Yeah,
Any
so
other comments on this?
the second exercise
Yeah.
is overblowing the palm keys.
Yeah.
So you get the undertone, the palm key, and the overtone.
Mm.
So on a D, no, maybe on E flat.
Yeah.
This is your E flat. You know, you can get these 3 different tones, and I think this is really like useful when you want to go up and over. It's overblowing, so it's not so different from the overtone series as well. And the last one is to use a thick bend. So I get my kids to use a rubbish reed, and then you put it on your F key, like that, just opening it a bit. And then if you play G, you get the first altissimo notes by creating this thick bend. Yeah, and then you get that you feel a different kind of position, and then slowly when you ease into like using the right fingering without this with this bend, and it's a lot easier as well because you already played it before and you know the kind of throat position that you need.
Okay. Could you show us exactly where you put it again and how you place, if you don't mind?
So C1, C2, C3, C4, C4.
Yeah.
And then I put it like that, so it's opening a tiny bit. Or
Yeah, it's
you can press your X key as well. I put it reed front. Yeah. Just a little bit.
okay.
So it's an additional like octave.
So it doesn't need to cover the whole hole, yeah? It's just a little
not
bit
at
of
all.
opening. Okay. Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, guys. Okay, so moving on with technical issues on the saxophone. The other big topic that I thought was quite prevalent in the questions was about intonation adjustments on tricky notes. So any comments on that? I would think maybe B, C sharp, C natural on the upper register especially. Would you have any suggestions, quick fixes for them?
Quick fixes, not really.
Or any alternate fingerings or something?
I think with intonation is a lifelong thing. Like
Yeah.
even for us now.
I think
Yeah.
there's a YouTube video recently by Zhang Aiwen and Valentine. It has all the secret. I haven't watched it yet actually, but I saw the heading. But like all the extra fingering that you use. But I think Tianzi has a lot of fingering that he can share. I guess.
Yeah, okay. So for me, right, usually I do not suggest using alternate fingerings because intonation is something that the student must be able to hear and not just rely on a certain a solution and then just ignore, and then since I'm playing in tune with this fingering. So for high B, unfortunately, there's no alternate fingerings that I know of except for putting your fingers in the F key and then just pressing down. Yeah, but the other thing let's talk about the video that Zhang Aiwen just recently shared was something about using your tongue position. Yeah, so it's like whistling. Sorry for those students who can't whistle. So it's like when you're whistling high pitch and then you have to drop the pitch doing something like this. So it's actually your tongue movement. So that position of the tongue actually helps you when you are doing pitch bend. So pitch bend is something that require time. So it's not really a quick fix. So sometimes when we are tutoring students, like only for like 1 or 2 sessions, it is very difficult for the student to achieve due to certain fundamentals issue as well. Okay, so the student must understand that changing the airspeed is usually not recommended. For example, dropping off jaw. Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps immediately for the students. But in the long term, when you are playing a very long lyrical phrase, you wouldn't want to keep on moving your jaw too much because the sound will not be the same throughout the melody. Yeah, so the pitch bend is actually something like this. So I will just play on the high B, high C, where the tongue touches and releases from the top bottom. Yeah, so it's something that you have to make sure you maintain the embouchure all the time and keeping your air intense all the time. Yeah, if you use your jaw here. Sorry, am I too loud?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So if I use my jaw, it's not so ideal in the long term for students. Yeah, but I guess if that can be considered a very quick solution, but I wouldn't recommend. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay, I think we should move on to other topics because we're running low on time soon. So
Can I
let's,
add something?
yes, please, yeah.
A very, very nice resource is the tuning CD, which is available for everyone on Spotify. So I really like playing like my roots, thirds, fifths
Yeah.
with this tuning CD as a drone. And then, that really increases like the listening awareness. And I found this very, very beneficial when I was studying, like doing my bachelor. So I
Yeah.
didn't know like C sharp is so sharp, this kind of things. Also, maybe like putting a pitch tendency chart. So like logging out like with a tuner exactly how sharp, how flat each note is. I think that's very, very, very useful as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure. Is it called tuning CD or is
the
there
tuning CD.
the tuning CD for saxophones or?
Yeah, I had this conversation with her yesterday night, so let me help her with this. You can find it on Spotify also. Yeah.
Okay, sure. All right, let's move on. Now, I think we should discuss a bit about any suggested exercises or etudes that you might have for our students. Maybe let's go from Leslie. Yeah.
Yeah, so these are some of the etudes. I have some of them with me. I'll type it out later lah. So of course we talk about the scale book, the Lomdeck scale book. So and then of course we have some etudes. So for younger students, we'll start on with the Guy Lecour progressive etudes. These are really easy for kids to start on, but be careful. Some of it doesn't. It's not in progression. So if you find one that's too difficult, you can just move on to the next one and then come back. So for technique, I will always get students to do the Marcel Mill etude after Bobby Guire. I think it's based on a flute one. And then for the slow etude, we always go for Furling, the classic. Yeah, so and I will recommend some books, like what Tianze say just now, the Rousseau book. This is for Altissimo. Yeah, and for in general, I would really recommend this book to read, The Art of Saxophone Playing. A lot of fundamentals are addressed. Although this book must be at least be like 50 years, but it's a lot of things are still very relevant to what we are doing today.
Yeah, adding on, there's one more book that I always use for students also. Um, the Top Tones for Saxophone by Sigurd Rascher. Yeah, they have some very good exercises. Like for this, in this case, wait, sorry. Yeah. So it's something to do with like the dynamics control and playing loud and soft. And there are also like checkpoints and solutions for the students to achieve. Yeah, to follow the instructions. Yeah, so I use these fundamentals exercises for my students.
Sure. Okay, I think Mitch is having technical difficulties, so we have to move on first. Okay, the next thing was about how to do vibrato on the saxophone. I mean, many, even secondary school students will at one point in time come to that point where they want to express themselves a bit better. So how would you suggest they start out with vibrato?
For saxophone, we'll call it like a lip vibrato, but it's actually based on the jaw. So we always uh, I will use var syllabus. And like if you read some books, right, you will say this is your tone line, and then it goes up and it goes down.
Yeah.
I don't suggest that, because if we do that, then it becomes what I always suggest students to do is to play up. Yeah, so the sound isn't so distorted. And how we get student to play, just say va 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 and up, and then practice with a metronome. So the first step is always practice with a metronome. And I will always ask students to play one time without vibrato, one time with vibrato. So with a scale, you'll be like. I'm sorry, I can't hear my metronome. And then after that, playing vibrato in semiquaver. So if you can do this every day, you just need to do one set, like one set a day, like but from B major, B flat major, B major, C major, C sharp major, D, E, F, and then just play down 2 octaves, and then we'll do one with no vibrato, and then one with gradually speeding up. And then one immediately fast. So the student can have a wide range, but the thing is to make sure you practice with the metronome first. Of course, if people will say it sounds mechanical, but you need to have the mechanism, and then listen to as much other instruments like violin or something that do a lot of vibrato, and then learn the musicality from there. Yeah, that's my idea of vibrato. How about Mitch? What do you think?
Wow, jumping back in. When I went to Arno actually, right, he told me like my vibrato is too mechanical. So basically, like from that moment on, before I was practicing with the metronome a lot, it was very, very useful because you know knowing what your jaw is doing. But like I was focusing more on like air pressure and like really, really listening and starting the vibrato straight away. I think these 3 things were very, very useful. Yeah. For me, starting the vibrato straight away was the biggest challenge. So I had to, you know, like start a note, like play a note. Okay, maybe example. Not having that like vibrato starting straight away, and then when you're in control of the vibrato, then you do like all kinds of different, you know, permutations. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's quite a bit of information for them, yeah, to try out. Now the other question was about how do we change between different saxophones? Are there any tips that you have, especially for people who are going from say alto to soprano, or maybe alto then to tenor, or if they're alternating quickly between pieces, or within the same piece even sometimes? So any tips for them?
Play plastic.
Play plastic?
Okay, so sorry, Michelina.
I found that like, you know, switching instruments, like playing plastic really, 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 really helped me. Like I don't have to wet the reed, you know, if I have to change between like tenor to alto, I can do it in like 5 seconds. All I need is the instrument in front of me and the sound, like it speaks straight away. Yeah.
Okay, so for me, right, I play alto mainly in Nafa, but in my quartet I usually play tenor. So I think the easiest way is to do mouthpiece pitch and long tones for warm up when you switch to another instrument, and then find the tone, the center of the tone. For example, if the tenor mouthpiece is slightly wider, you wouldn't want to play it too tight as well. Yeah, so that the lower notes definitely will require a little bit more air support due to the length of the instrument. Yeah, I think the other thing that is much more useful for me is when I change to another instrument, I will do the mouthpiece pitch. Yeah, so I kind of like readjust the setting and my voicing for the instrument because of the range. Yeah, so for soprano, definitely it can go very, very high. You wouldn't want to play like a alto kind of air, the white air, the high note, you will not be able to achieve it easily. Even for baritone, if you are using a soprano kind of air stream, I think it will be very hard for you to play the baritone, especially when you're going down to the low A. yeah, the air support is always important through the instrument. They are actually the same. Yeah.
Any other comments, Leslie?
Can I
on this?
add some?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
Sure.
I
Yes.
don't have, so Mitch can go ahead.
Sure.
Like when I say I play plastic, right? I actually have quite a number of like plastic reeds.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just the first one that I open from the box because they are really quite different as well. So actually, I go to the store and I test them out as well. So I find like this process really helps. So I'm playing plastic on SATB. So for me, I think like switching from bigger instruments to smaller instruments help a lot. So like I did a concert playing SATB. So I tried to program it such that I start from no, wrong way, going from smaller to bigger. Yeah, so I programmed it such that I was playing soprano at the start and baritone at the end. You know, because the embouchure is completely different. This is a very the soprano embouchure is quite a lot of pressure. It's quite tight, whereas the baritone embouchure is a lot more relaxed.
Yeah.
And then like if you go from tight to relaxed, it really helps a lot. So maybe thinking about programming as well, or when you practice, try to start on like tighter ones before you move on to like the baritone, for example.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I think in the essence of time, we should be wrapping up soon. So let's entertain just one last question. I think we're going to keep it quite short. So now, equipment, I think with regards to saxophones and even any woodwinds, actually, I would think equipment always comes, I don't know, it's our bane and blessing of this, So any comments on that quickly? I would think maybe you can focus on mouthpiece and reed or ligatures.
For me, I will always want student to play on a mouthpiece that's comfortable for them. So I do have my go-to mouthpiece. Like when it's a new student, I will get them to play on the Selma concept because it's easy, But as the student progress, they are allowed to find their sound and they find what they want. So
Yeah.
I think my advice for student is listen to your favorite saxophonist, see what they play.
Yeah.
A big problem that I see for a lot of teachers is, okay, I'll buy a bigger mouthpiece so
Yeah.
that we can train their air. But in the process of you training the student air, the student is biting so hard just to produce the sound. So you must find the right compromiser. It's not like, I think for saxophone, it should be very easy. You should just play, if the saxophone is serviced well,
Yeah.
a mouthpiece and a reed that's appropriate for their size. I like metal ligature. That's the only thing. As long as it's metal, I'm okay. And because the cloth one, it usually wears out after a short time. Yeah, so
Okay.
that's my concern.
Any other quick comments?
For me,
Yeah.
usually the mouthpiece that I will recommend conductor is the Selmer S90 180, the S80 C-Star, the Concept, or even the newly launched Van Doren Profile. It's quite flexible mouthpiece. So I think these are quite the common one that we use for the students. But like what Leslie said, the mouthpiece is not, everybody don't sound exactly the same when they try the mouthpiece. So I think it is good to let the student try themselves because that way you will understand how they are feeling and when they shift between intervals, the control. Yeah.
Okay. And reeds, plastic or cane? Mitch is plastic, yeah?
Dadario.
Okay.
I have to say I'm a Dadario artist. So I always, when students come in without a Dadario, I can say you're using another brand today. So but for me, I mean Mitch loves plastic, which works for some people. But for me, I was playing on plastic for a year or something before I switched to Dadario. Is I lose the sensation of the reed.
Okay.
It's very nice to play. I lose the sensation of the reeds, and like what Mitch said, plastic also you need to try it out. And I was very frustrated with the quality of the reeds I was getting with plastics. So you have to try it out for yourself. If you like it and it makes a good sound, go ahead. For me, Dadario is very constant, but I know there's this concern that I think it's for all reeds. Don't use the same reed every day. Don't play 5 hours on the same reed. You should have like a few reeds that you rotate. Like for me, because I don't really practice that much because I spend a lot of time teaching, is like if I have to practice for a recital, I will have like I'll play this reed today for like 2 hours. I'll play another reed for 2 hours, and then I have 3 or 4 reeds that I rotate, and then it works well for me. So and honestly speaking, I have a box of reed and I can use it for like a year or 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, guys. I mean, I think we have to end here to make way for the next group that we are showcasing later. Flutes will be starting their session at 1:30 for whoever is interested. Okay, for those who tuned in, thanks very much. Hope you take care of yourself well, and we'll see you at the end of the circuit breaker. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Take
Thank
care.
you.